Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dbacks podcast, Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage-related podcast. Today, we are going to be talking Cincinnati Reds, the two-game sweep that the Dbacks executed at Chase Field earlier in the week. We're going to be talking about the Dbacks being owed a potential bit of rub of the green from the umpires after some pretty poor scoring performances from the men in black. No, not those men in black. In the last few games, and we're going to be talking redemptions. So we're looking at Corbin and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. back to almost their best. So obviously that gives me the excuse to title this episode Reds, Debts, Redemption. I'm joined with a pretty boring cup of tea this week, just your standard English breakfast tea. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. Let's talk the Cincinnati series. The D-backs took a 2-0 sweep over the Reds at Chase Field. Quick recap of the games for you. So game one, this was a Jordan Montgomery start. We actually got our scheduled Montgomery start with no Bs this time, which scrapped his last play. It looked a little shaky just to get started. He gave up his hit to India, the first batter he faced, on a 3-2 full count in the first. But as we know, it does take a while for those veteran pitchers to really get warmed up. So I think we could kind of scrub that one. Responded to get the K on Ellie De La Cruz on 3 pitches, and he got out of it for a scoreless first inning. So even though there was a little bit of nerves clearly showing there, he might have been slightly rusty, which is always the case with those veteran pitchers. Sometimes they can take a little while to get started. Jordan Montgomery basically got through it. And the D-backs then kind of had a good go at having a strong first inning. Cattell and Jock hit 102 and 107 off of the bat, but their swinging wasn't quite effective enough. Scoring-wise, Gabby Moreno got his first home run of the year, hitting it out to the opposite direction. Jock Peterson got his 5th home run of the year. And then Kevin Newman walked it off, and the former Red had hit 4 and 5 with 2 RBIs that night to get the D-backs the win in that one. So a fairly solid game all round. A few mistakes in places. Some things may be unfairly scored as an error when it probably should have just been a base hit. And then game 2, it was a bit more of a tight game in game 2. I think key players there, got to talk about Brandon Pfaadt. He was dealing. He was absolutely filthy. Well, filthy with a P, like people like to put that on Twitter. It took him just 79 pitches to get to the 6th, and he racked up 9 Ks. It was absolutely brilliant. That splitter-slider combo that he throws, and then, the 12-6 curveball, he was absolutely working on it, and his fastball actually had a lot better placement than we're used to seeing. He'd start a sequence with the fastball just to nudge the batter off just a little bit, and then the way he can get people to chase kind of at the bottom corners of the zone is genuinely really quite impressive. So Brandon Pfaadt, I think, was probably one of the men of the match on that one. Ketel Marte extended their hitting streak to 15 games, and once again, Ketel is on an absolute tear when it comes to consistency, getting those hits. He had that fantastic post-game season streak, which is itself pretty fantastic. Christian Walker cracked home run number 8 of the year, and then Lourdes got back to hit the game-winning RBI double, driving in Corbin Carroll, and that was in the 8th. So the D-backs took that one 2-1 after some random solo home runs just kind of popped in there just to spice the game up a little bit. But overall, it was some pretty solid performances all round. If we go back and look at these scorecards, which I will now pull up, it was pretty competitive baseball. The Reds are a team that I think most of us would be expecting to beat, but baseball doesn't always work that way. And most you can look at a game and think, yeah, we should absolutely be winning that, but hey, we've seen worse. But then you got to look at how we performed against the Reds last time we played them out, with Hunter Green going up against Slade Ciccone, and the Reds took that one 6-2. So, they're a team who are capable of playing some really good baseball and outplaying us as well. Like, You looked at that stat in that 6-2 loss. We gave up 13 hits as opposed to just getting ourselves 6. Slade Ciccone had 5.27 ERA. Hunter Green had 3.27. So that tells you just worlds apart. And that's our number 5 guy. That's Ciccone's just kind of there, but you got to be looking at this thing thinking, okay, the fact that we've gone back to Chase Field, taken it back, and got the 2-game sweep there is pretty solid. D-backs now 20-23, third in the NL West versus the Reds, who are 18-24 and fourth in the NL Central. So not a completely even matchup, but not a bad one. You got to look at the key calls in that loss. You look at Blaze Alexander singling on that ground ball. In the bottom of the third, he's 0-2, 2 outs, and getting kind of a clutch in, driving in 2 RBI, which pushes the win probability to 75.4 towards Arizona, and somehow we still managed to screw that up. We got two runs driven in the third, and then the fourth, fifth, and sixth, the Reds all got two runs per inning. And, it's that kind of thing with Ciccone coming round first time in the order. He's absolutely dominates. It's a scoreless first 3 innings. But then 4th inning, 5th inning, 6th inning, second time around the order, he just could not nail those guys down. So the fact that, you had pitchers Montgomery and Fart coming in the games at Chase Field, you got to think, yep, all right, sorted that one out. Ultimately, though, we've got to talk about where we're at in terms of what this D-backs team thinks it can do. I think a lot of people are talking about how the D-backs can kind of get back to 0.500 in the form charts, try and at least even it up a bit. And I think key to that will be, one, whether or not we can keep the bats swinging and, Walker, Peterson getting those hits, Ketel Marte coming in clutch. But when we can get the other big guys, Corbin, Eugenio Suarez, and then whoever's playing shortstop as well, which at the moment seems to be just basically up for grabs with Geraldo Perdomo out. Blaze Alexander's the guy playing there right now. So we'll have to see. But then we've got some kind of rocky games coming up. No, I'm not talking about the Rockies. We've got Detroit coming in, which will be, 2 o'clock in the morning if you're in the UK like me tuning into that one. They've just unveiled their City Connect uniforms for the year, incidentally, and I appear to be in the majority. I quite like them. There's been this trend, and I know 47 as a brand have done this as well, where people are looking at like football or what you guys over in the States would call soccer uniforms and trying to incorporate some of that. But I like the Detroit City Connect uniforms, the black and the blue, kind of with the almost Shelby style Ford Mustang stripes down the middle with the fade. I don't think that's that bad, but I'm a sucker for the Serpientes uniform, so I still think we win the fashion show on that one. I've just got 2 new Serpientes hoodies in, so I'm happy to say we love the Serpientes gear. But back to baseball rather than turning this into a fashion discussion. Game, I'm going to go with the game with who's earning the wins for the D-backs, and this will go into talking redemptions, which was going to be my third item to talk about, but it seems like we've got a pretty seamless transition here. Talking redemptions, this week on Diamondbacks Twitter, Dalton Feely posted a tier list on Twitter of, the D-backs and where they are, and looking at ranking the D-backs, starting from studs to consistently solid. So far, so good. Pleasantly surprised, mid. Surprised, I'm not upset you're on the roster still. I'm not mad, just disappointed. Figure it out. Corbin, please be good again, I beg you. And the IL. And we're going to be going over a few of those picks in there because there's certainly some controversial opinions in there. The first one, I think I'm fairly universal in this, is Brandon Pfaadt. He's still underrated by such a huge proportion of our fan base. Every time he gets on the mound, he looks pretty solid. He's very rare that he gives up an inning where you think, okay, he's just lost the game for the D-backs. Thinking about what we thought our starting rotation would be going into this year, with obviously Zach Gallen in the ace spot, Merrill Kelly, Erod, Jordan Montgomery, and then Brandon Pfaadt. People were thinking Brandon Pfaadt was going to be the number 5 guy, and he's very he's very quickly making himself a name to be that number 3 spot. I think if you can look at some of the other pitchers like Martinez, will he be somebody we try and build into a starter? Slade Tichoni, he hasn't quite looked there yet. Great, like I said, first way through the order, but not so good the second time around. Brandon Pfaadt's our number 3 guy right now. If you want to consider him ahead of Jordan Montgomery, which I would in terms of at least consistency in how they've delivered. Like Brandon Pfaadt has not looked quite as rusty as Montgomery did at the start of this year. So I think they've had very different springs in terms of how they've gotten ready for the year. Obviously, Montgomery was a free agent. He didn't have a club. He got signed by the Dbacks on a 1-year deal and was seemingly so unhappy with being signed on a 1-year deal that he got rid of his agent. He changed his representation because clearly he thought he should have been going for a 3-4-year deal for bigger money somewhere else, but he's had to take what he can get, which, says more about us than it does about him. But I think we have to consider that as a factor when you look at where you would rank him compared to our other pitchers. So I'd say Brandon Pfaadt's the number 3 guy there. And then the other call that I've seen a lot of reaction to from that post from Dalton Feely is talking about Ryan Thompson. I think he's having an absolutely fantastic run as one of the reserve pitchers. And Jesse Friedman, who most of you guys will know on Dbacks Twitter, comes out with some absolutely fantastic stats, has posted the stat of the lowest ERA in Diamondbacks history with a minimum of 30 innings pitched. And we'll start from the 5th, which is Dre Jameson at 2.63, Brad Ziegler at 2.57, Tim Worrell at 2.27, Clay Buchholz at 2.01, and then you get Ryan Thompson at the number 1 spot at the lowest ERA in D-backs history with minimum 30 innings pitched. He's at 0.87, which for a pitcher who is effectively a submariner, he's got that kind of freaky big extension, the way he kind of rolls sideways and gets that big shoulder slinging stuff kind of down low across the zone. That's pretty impressive in itself. But then you got to see about how it's actually working and the kind of size of all of these players and the way they play. There was a fantastic strikeout he got in the game 3 days ago now against Ellie De La Cruz. And De La Cruz is a big guy, 6'5", playing at shortstop, and some people have said he's actually potentially too tall to play shortstop, just because he seems a bit gangly and a bit unnatural, sort of like how Peter Crouch plays football at times. But it seems to work for him, especially with that big speed that he's got and that kind of cannon of an arm. But he couldn't get down to where Ryan Nelson was pitching the ball. He was kind of swinging down and across the flight path of the ball over the plate. Like the ball was actually slightly below the strike zone, but Ellie just couldn't get to it. So I think you have to consider that's something we can work on. That's something we can actually build a strategy out of. And if you look at D-backs game against the Reds on the 15th, where the final score was 2-1. D-backs got 6 hits. Reds gave up 3. The win was actually earned by Ryan Thompson's pitching there. He's 1-1 now with 1.00 ERA, and then Paul Sewald got the save, which brings him to 2 for the year. But you look at the wrap of that game. D-backs jumped out with solo home shots in the 2nd. Reds replied with the same in the 5th, and D-backs got that run from Lourdes in the 8th, and then Sewald got the save in the 9th. But Ryan Thompson's now 1-1 in terms of performances here. You got to look at the top performances there. Brandon Pfaadt with 7 innings pitched, and he gave up 2 hits, 1 ER, but 9 strikeouts. You look at the kind of who played where for that on the box. You got to go pitching. Pfaadt, Thompson, who earned the win, and then Sewald. 3 pitchers. That's theoretically the ideal. If your starter can get through the 7th, you bring in your setup guy, which, ideally isn't always a super sexy position, but he does a good job. But then he comes in, sets it up, gives up 1 hit, but no runs. It's 1 strikeout. So it's a simple 1-1. And Sewald comes in, gives up no hits, gets it with an ERA of 2.25. And I think that's the Paul Sewald we need to see. And I think Paul Sewald operates better when the guy who's pitched the 8th in front of them has done well. Like we saw it especially in the NLCS against the Phillies. You've got Kevin Ginkel would come in for the 8th. Usually it was somebody like an Andrew Solfrank who would pitch the 7th if Gallen or Merrill Kelly hadn't quite made it all the way through there. Maybe Miguel Castro, although long-time viewers of the show will know how I feel about him. And then Sewell comes in and he does the job. He's always better when, it's been a solid 8th where we can just kind of keep that momentum rolling. He's not a power pitcher. He doesn't come in and just kind of blow people away like an Aroldis Chapman or like Martinez in our organization starting to go, where he's pitching that average of 102 sometimes. Sewell's a guy who's kind of takes things at his own pace. He's a veteran, and the fact that he's back and pitching what we expect his best to be, that can only be good for the Diamondbacks there. So we'll go ahead and take that. Speaking of redemptions, are Corbin Carroll and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. kind of back yet? I think maybe not. Corbin's clearly done some work on his swing. Bob Brenly pointed that out on commentary the other night. He's not chopping at those high fastballs. He's trying to be a bit more solid at bat. I think I would, strangely, for somebody who I get super excited to see hit big home runs, I would like to see Corbin just trying to be a bit more intelligent. There's those little infield knocks, kind of bunting to get on base. And when you got people like Christian Walker and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Ketel Marte as the people behind you in the order, if you using Corbin as the leadoff hitter as we've become accustomed to doing, I would like to see him playing a bit more intelligently, just like not trying to hit the ball out for doubles and triples and get racing around the bases really easily. I'd like him to just get on base, bunt onto first, start causing that chaos that we know he can do, because that Rookie of the Year award was, he was hitting well, he was fielding well last year, but he was running terrifically. If you play on MLB The Show, he's got 99 speed, 99 stealing, and I think that is the maximum unless he gets supercharged. If I'm not correct, you can tell me in the comments if that's wrong. So, I'd like to see Corbin doing a bit more of that, especially since we don't have Alec Thomerson, Geraldo Perdomo, the guys who can draw some walks, get on base, do more of that running. We don't have that much speed in that lineup. Blaze Alexander isn't slow, but I haven't seen him do much yet on base this year. Let's get his stats up. Let's see. Blaze, where is he? There we go. Here's Blaze's stats. So yeah, short stopping. A bit shorter for that shortstop. Yeah, one stolen base in his career. Out of 87 at bats, he's got 22 hits, 3 home runs. His hitting's been pretty good, with an OPB of .337. But yeah, only 1 stolen base. So we got to turn to guys like Corbin Carroll who are going to do that. Ketel Marte, I know, is worth a try on it sometimes, but he's a bigger dude. He doesn't shift as quickly as Corbin does. You've got to start trying to use your skills here, and I think that's something a lot of people have pointed out that Torey Lovello hasn't quite been doing. The way that us as all of our armchair fans, as most of us are, especially me, sitting usually in bed watching at like 2, 3 in the morning, is you can see where people are good and where people aren't. And like if Lourdes is not swinging the bat well, if Lourdes isn't doing great, why are we keeping him in the lineup when Blaze Alexander, who at one point was our best hitter, is getting benched for that? It might be his rookie year really, but got to give him a shot here. I mean, you look at the difference between, his last 15 games, 40 at bats, 6 hits, 3 RBI, and then in the last 7 games, he's had half of that with just 1 run, 2 hits. So it's starting to cool off if we don't use him, and especially if we're using him as, a pinch hitter, pinch runner. That's not going to get the best out of Blaze. So I'm not going to mic drop because that's not how podcast setups work. But Torey Lovello, listen to the people. Give Blaze Alexander the games he wants. I know we have, shortstop options. We brought in all of those utility guys like Grichuk, Barnhart, Newman, etc. But the guy will be good. You're not looking at probably another Rookie of the Year this year. You've got some crazy players who are going to be having their rookie campaigns. if you're watching / listening to this on Friday the 17th, the day I'll be putting it out. Today, Paul Skeens is kind of back for another go, pitching for the Pirates against the Cubs, and like what a player he looks, like incredible velocity. He threw, I think, an 8-pitch sequence, all above 100 miles an hour last night. So, not last night, last week. So, yeah. Anyway, speaking of guys dressed in all black, let's talk umpires. Because the debts in our Red Depths redemption here is the umpires, who I think owe us a little bit, especially after the shocking performance in Game 2 of the Dbacks Reds series. They've been so harsh on us, though, throughout the whole month. Most of you guys will remember Jock Peterson getting ejected for calling it out in the 4th of one of our previous games. On the topic of Blaze Alexander, he had an 11-pitch sequence on an at-bat and was struck out with 3 checked swings, which were checked swings, were called strikes in the zone when one of them was one of the furthest out I've seen a called strike. It was the first strike was called and it was kind of up just above the zone, inch and a half or so above the zone. The second one was tight up and inside, inch and a half, 2 inches. And then the third strike that got called was massively high. Like in the movement of the check swing, Blaze Alexander kind of moved their arm out of the way. If he's just standing there with his arms at his side, like a normal person would do before, not taking a major league pitch, that would have been a hit by pitch. But they called it a strike in the zone, and I think that says a lot about the consistency of the umpires that we're starting to get. We haven't yet had a major issue this year if you're the Diamondbacks with Angel Hernandez. Famously terrible umpire. Loads of people really don't like him. He's made a call last week where the reaction to it, especially from the guys over at John Boy Media, have actually been like going through the archives trying to find a worse call than the one that Angel Hernandez made. It was a very entertaining little video that you can find clipped on YouTube. I think that I'd say that's well worth the watch if you're the kind of nerd who loves like obscure trivia like that, like I do. But yeah, if you look at that game against the Reds, the umpire scorecards, which is a wonderful Twitter account at Ump Scorecards over on Twitter/X, they had it at a +6.5 for Cincinnati, which is absurd. There's only one other game where there's been a worse bias in terms of the umpires' missed calls or incorrect calls, and I think that was a 0.72 earlier in the year. So, I think we could earn a little bit of rub of the green from the umpires later in the year. I don't really mind too much if this happens in the regular season. These things, have a karmic way of evening themselves out. My mother-in-law is fond of saying that if an umpire gets a close one wrong, they'll very deliberately get the next further out one wrong as well, just to try and balance it out. But we really gotta look at this and say, enough is enough. I know MLB is kind of a self-sufficient organization, and what the chairman and the commissioner say goes, but it's screwing us a little bit. So if anyone from the MLB is listening, which it's always possible, even for a little podcast like this one, make sure we get that rub of the green coming back the other way. When we're in the postseason this year, I would really appreciate it. It's on the behalf of all 3 of us Diamondbacks fans in the United Kingdom. I know for a fact there are 3 definite confirmed lunatics like myself in the United Kingdom at the moment. That number may or may not increase soon, depending on whether or not we can actually get back to that .500 form rate. But that's going to wrap up this episode of the Dbacks podcast. I'd like you to just say thank you very much for listening. As always, I'm looking forward to further in this month. I'll be doing a little review of the season so far, and then I'm going to be previewing the London series with some special guests, and that'll be a video podcast that you can find on YouTube alongside the usual audio releases, so I'm looking forward to doing that one for you guys. But yes, as always, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe wherever you're traveling, especially if you're going to be on the road to any of the games not at Chase Field or on your way to Chase Field downtown in Phoenix, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.